your messages to our WhatsApp number, which is 0809-444-0981, or just tweet at us using the hashtag BusinessExpress981, and Rotus will give you all the things that you need to be tweeting and commenting about now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Folu. We have Afri Invest in the studio with us. Ayo is here. Ayo, good morning.
Good morning, Rotus. Good morning, Lagos.
Oh, Lagos, there's so much to talk about. I don't know, we have to just try and get through all this. Okay, look, we're supposed to be looking at the stock exchange, but there was no trading yesterday. However, Ayo, let's just quickly look at global markets, because there was a massive sell-off. I mean, well, this has been happening on and off, but the American stock exchange, Europe, Asia, I even looked at some African markets. Egypt was down, South Africa was down. I mean, I'm thinking if our own market was, if not for the public holiday, maybe Wutu would have been down yesterday.
Okay.
What's going on, man?
Okay, so basically for the global markets, we've seen, some retreats from the positive momentum we saw, during the first quarter of the year.
Right.
More of the slowdown has been in emerging markets. So we've seen most emerging markets like Argentina, for example, South Africa, and Nigeria also. We've seen Nigeria also, some of these markets suffer from some negative sentiments, particularly regarding currencies, and that's tied to policy normalization in most of the developed markets.
Okay.
So we've seen these markets suffer, but now we are seeing the bearish momentum, come down even into the developed markets. So even in Europe, the issues with Italy as regards their budget deficit and financing also didn't help matters too for the European markets.
Okay.
So the sentiments from that also, affected markets. Brexit too.
Yes,
the
the Brexit issue,
yes, more issues coming up. I think last week where some ministers from, Theresa May's cabinet resigned. So some of these issues are still lingering on our ability to be able to push through, a hard Brexit, and it's becoming, a worry for most analysts and investors in the capital markets. So for the US, the problem with the US currently, analysts are looking at the possibility that growth outlook may be tampered, considering the fact that the Fed is actually not looking like slowing down on its rate hike, on its policy normalization.
Okay.
So while at the last meeting they held, the Fed fund target rates.
And sorry, just for our listeners, the Fed is the equivalent of the MPC.
Of the MPC here in Nigeria.
Fine.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
Okay. So while they held at the last meeting, there's a large probability that they may hike rates at least once more in the December meeting before the end of the year. So investors are looking at the possibility that this might hamper growth. So concern is on the US economy growing, and even some portfolio managers have mentioned the possibility of the US shifting into a recession.
Right.
Yes. So, and this is filtering into across the sectors. We've seen stocks like Apple from the peak of the 1 trillion, lost about 24%. S&P 500, even across all the major indices in the US market yesterday, bled more than 1.5%.
If you Lagos, if you want to just check this, just type in on Google global stock markets and put I think it's the Wall Street Journal has a table. Global stock markets WSG. You'll see a table with all the stock markets across the globe. The whole thing is red. I mean,
Benga seems to agree a little bit with you. He sent a message to say the US stocks have been on the upward trend for a long time, so it seems that trend just might be coming to an end, and that Trump protectionism is finally playing its part.
Thank you for that, Benga. Asian markets, this whole
the trade war between the US and China still is something investors looked at. Even last week, when you look at markets last week, most of the indices were down.
Right.
So, but when you look at what really drove that, still the issue of growth that I mentioned earlier, and then also any news as regard the trade war, either is a repetition of what has happened before, or future steps that will be taken. Investors seem to react at every bit of the news, and we saw some comments from one of the key officials on trade in US, talking about the fact that China needs to be punished because they feel they are supporting their companies and their enterprises in intellectual property theft. So this is signaling an effect that the meeting that will be holding between China's Prime Minister and Trump in about a week's time concerning resolving their trade issues may actually still end up deadlocked. So investors are not being positive of that. And the sort of good news that has driven performance so far this year, which is companies' earnings results, have actually kind of simmered down. So investors are looking at the fact that performances of companies will be hampered, looking at growth outlook, looking at policy normalization by the Fed, and then also the trade disagreements between US and China, two of the biggest markets in the world. And this is also affecting the Asian markets too, because if the major guys are falling, it tends to filter into other markets, just like we saw in the emerging markets issues that way.
Now, why? It's really, really something to behold. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned China, because by the way, now Lagos, let me just set this up. We've been talking about, Nigeria has become unfortunately, the poverty capital of the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
No small chill.
I mean, India has 5 times our population, Abi, yet
yes.
we have 10 million more people in extreme poverty.
Mm.
Glad you mentioned China. I would like for everyone that's listening, just search for this article. In fact, I'll tweet it and we'll retweet it on the Smooth FM handle. The American dream is alive in China. Ayo, this statistic, just read it out for people. The one that we talked about yesterday. The number of people that China has lifted out of poverty, over the last how many 25 years or so.
About 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty.
How many again? Is it that number?
800 million people.
800 million.
To put in perspective, that should be about 2.5 times US population.
And
bring it to Nigeria about
4 times.
Four times
even
our
if
population.
you say Nigeria is 200 million people,
exactly.
So
yes.
4 times Nigeria's population.
They've been able to bring them out of poverty.
Yeah.
But the case you have in Nigeria is you find more people slipping into poverty as the day goes by. So for China, for example, you look at over the past decade, GDP per capita has actually increased from about $3,500 to about $12,000. Relative to the US, that's smaller. But when you look at the rate of growth, about 200% in GDP per capita. When you compare that to US just a rate of growth of about 30-something%.
Right.
And when you look at how China has become so relevant in global trade today, and the policies that they have put in place, particularly as regards industrialization and finance, you would know that the reason why they are actually achieving this is not far-fetched. So you look at the fact that China produce a lot of what they consume.
Right.
They have one of the biggest markets in the world because of their population, and then they are also able to drive growth, based on their exports, on the fact that they export to a lot of countries. Even when you look at the relationship with a lot of countries in terms of external borrowings to them.
Right.
You look at, for example, Africa, borrowings has gone from about 1 billion to about 10 billion in just about 4 years. So their influence on global markets, on global economic issues, is actually becoming stronger. That some people have beginning to see them as a threat to US as world power. So it's a lot that they are doing, particularly even on the aspect of inclusive growth, making that growth
loans, and I think they give out loans anyhow to their people. So, loans everywhere.
Messages are coming in. We have Papi K who sent in a WhatsApp message to say midterm results and the Dems retaking Congress is also a big determinant in the recent behaviors of the market. Expect plenty standoff between the Congress and POTUS. Awagbenga says 800 people moving out of poverty in China. That's the type of miracle we need here. But it was done through homegrown policies and a focused leadership.
Thank you for that.
Rainmaker says trade wars can be responsible for U.S. stocks downturn. The Fed are not doing well with futures markets, and easing rates to attract investment is not a good way to grow economic performance. Remember WB downtime 2019 global growth slowly because of this trade wars. The U.S. will also be judged for this week and probably the rest of the year on Khashoggi. Germany and France also not doing well, leaving the EU in the red zone as well. But Rotus, please. Have you heard about CBN planning to raise capital requirements to $5 billion for fintech firms?
Yes, and I think we talked about that last week, right? It's a lot of people aren't very happy with that development because they're saying that you're essentially just putting them out of business.
Yes, exactly. Microfinance banks, $2 billion. Other mobile payment systems, $2 billion. They have no idea. Why would the telcos have to pay $5 billion? Why we have to? So
if I have $5 billion, why would I go and open fintech? I'll go and do something else with the money. Okay, since we're talking since the Tech Friday, I have to mention this because by Friday it will become stale news. Bitcoin has fallen now to what? Under $5,000.
Yes.
I hear the news coming out now is that there's an investigation, Ayo, that there actually may have been coordinated price manipulation in Bitcoin's meteoric rise. You hear about that?
Yes. Okay. So when you look at what brings such suspicion, for example, when you look at is the distribution of the number of countries that where the volume of Bitcoin transactions actually occur. So by the time you look at the top 3 or top 4 countries for Bitcoin transactions, you see that they contribute quite a lot of the transactions. So there's a possibility that some major traders during the periods where price was rising up, must have been issues of certain traders coming together just to prop up prices and ensure that they're able to get out at good profits. So that may be the issue that we are seeing, and that was said by a fraud investigator.
Yeah, let me read that quote.
Okay,
so it's a University of Texas finance professor, John Griffin, who has a 10-year track record of spotting financial fraud, and his graduate students, see the education sector there in the US. Anyway, graduate student Amin Shams published a study in June that said at least half of the jump in Bitcoin was due to coordinated price manipulation.
Yes.
So we're going to see how that goes. Ayo, thank you so much from Afri Invest. Thank you. That's all. We didn't touch any Nigerians. Thanks for coming
Ibrahim
in today.
sent a message to say, please don't forget population check measures introduced by China as well. A time bomb waiting for us if we don't act quickly.
Thank you for that, Ibrahim.
But thank you, everyone. We have come to the end of this show. Do stick around, though, because coming up next, a bit of information about money and perhaps getting these loans that some of you might need. So keep listening to Smooth Breakfast.